There you go. Alright, so let's look at question number 1. It says, does the table represent a linear exponential? So I'm hoping everybody got this one right, because all you had to do is put it in the spreadsheet. So right here on the side, if you did get it wrong, because the answer was what? Those of you who made 100, what did you put there? A. So what it was a picture of an exponential curve. So all you had to do is put the table in the spreadsheet, do a menu 3-9, and that's it. So you would have seen, like, I think this one is what, going down, so you would have seen little dots like this, kind of like in a curve. And that is an exponential decay. You can see the numbers are going down right here for the y. So it would look something like this, and that's an exponential. Linear means it has to be in a straight line. So if you pick linear, that's not true. If it's a curve, it could be an exponential, it could be a quadratic. I mean, there's other functions that make a curve, but in this topic, the one that we're doing, we were only talking about exponential. So it was either linear or exponential. So the correct answer was A. So if you missed it, put over here on the side what you could have done, because you really shouldn't have missed the first one. It was way too easy. Now this is the one I had to go back and fix. It said, suppose the population of 13 ladybugs doubles in size every month. And then they gave you the function. They started with 13, and then they're multiplying by 2 because they said it doubled. It gives the population after X months. How many ladybugs will there be after 7 months? So this one was easy. Those of you who made 100, what did you do? How do you solve this problem?
You graph it.
You graph it. When in doubt, graph it out. Like anytime, guys, anytime they give you a function, you really should graph it. And you should either look at the graph or look at the table. A lot of times you just need to look at the graph, but in this question, you need to look at the table. So see, there it is, the ladybugs are growing, but if you go to Control T, you'll see all the months here listed. And if you go back to 0, you can see, look, they did start with 13 ladybugs. And they are doubling. Look at the numbers, they are doubling. And so all you had to do is scroll down to, what was it, 7? So that's your answer right there. And that would have been the correct answer. And that's why I had to go back and fix that on y'all's paper. Because you picked this, but because it had a B, you put B and it counted it wrong. So I went back and added the point. Okay, so right here, let's put, like in your notes, graph, Control T. If you didn't know how to solve this problem, this is all you had to do. And then you had to just look it up on the table, like even draw the table for yourself so that you can see that, look, you were looking for 7 to see what number was on this side. And this is the answer they wanted, okay? So again, you shouldn't miss this. Super easy, graph Control T. Now the next one, it says, what is the y-intercept of this function? So again, what could you have done to solve this problem? What could we have done? Graph. When in doubt, graph it out. If you look at the graph, you'll find out what the y-intercept means, where it crosses the y-axis. Like, where does your function cross the y? That's why they call it a y. So all you had to do was, again, graph. Now, we do have a menu option. Anybody remember what the menu option is, where it gives you the y-intercept? 5-1. And y'all need to know that for the star, because you're going to miss easy questions like that. Now, another thing you could have looked at was this number right here. That is your y-intercept. We call it the initial value, but it's also considered your y-intercept. And so the answer would have been 0, and then the 8 is your y, like where it is on the y. Okay, now again, you could have just graphed it also. Go over here, you plug in the function, which is what? 8 times 1/3 to the x power, and then just do a menu 5-1. So again, if you miss this, you really need to ask yourself, like, why did I miss that? That's super easy. Just do a menu 5-1. And if you would have looked at your review, you would have seen that's what we wrote down. Like, if you didn't study, then you need to study. Okay? Math isn't easy. But if you study for it, I guarantee you're going to remember what to do. All right, so the next one, let me zoom in a little bit. I think these are the ones that maybe most of you missed. If you missed a question, it was probably 4, because these were a little more difficult. You had to set up your own equation. One, you need to be following along, please. So if you look over here, to suppose the population of a town is 19,600. So this is the starting amount. It's decreasing 3% every year. And then it says, using an exponential function, predict the population after 4 years. So again, these are the ones where you're going to have to set up your own exponential function, but they're not as difficult as you think. The starting amount is your A, so that number is going to be your A, so 19,600. Okay, I think everybody knows that that's your A, but it's the B that you're having the most difficult with. So the B, which would be this number right here, you're going to get that by using this percentage, okay? And so if you look at the percentage, it was decreasing by 3%. So in order to get, and write it down if you didn't know what to do, in order to get this number that goes right here, take 100% and subtract the 3%, and what are you left with? What's 100 minus 3? 97. And then you do need to change it to a decimal, so all you have to do is move 2 places to the right. I think a lot of you are putting 3% here, and it's not 3%. It's decreasing 3%. So that means it's only going to grow 0.97% if you think about it. So this is what you would have put in your calculator and then looked it up. So you would have done, 19,600 times 0.97, and then just looked up the 4 years, like what is 4 years? So those of you got it right, which answer was it? C. 17,351. Okay, that was the closest one. I don't think they rounded right on that one. Let's see. I'm just curious, because I know that somebody had shown me this, and they're like, did they round wrong? And I think they did, so I'm going to have to fix that one too. But that was the closest, regardless whether they rounded wrong or not. The rest of the answers were way off. So it was this one right here. So if you notice, this is why we're saying they rounded wrong. That 7 should have rounded that up to a 2. Okay. But again, that was the closest answer. So yes, it's still this answer right here. Now, number 5, it says suppose the population of a wild turkey in the state is 1.1 million, and it's increasing 2%. So again, they want you to come up with an exponential function, predict the population after 8 years. So you had to do this again on both of these. Now, did they say increase or decrease? Increase. So instead of doing what we did up here, where we subtracted the percentage, you're going to want to add the percentage. So you should have added those 2%. In other words, it's going to grow 100% plus 2 more, and that makes it 102%. And then you do have to move 2 places to the left, so 1.02. So this would have been your function. They started with 1.1, and then it's growing 102%, which 1.02 is a decimal. And then again, graph control T. All you had to do was look up the 8 years to see what value was over here on this side. So what value was it? Those of you got it right? C, 1.29 million. Okay. So again, graph control T, but you had to set up your own. That's the only thing. I think that's what maybe threw some people off. Now, number 6, it was super easy. What's the decay factor? Well, what is the factor, the A or the B? The B. And you needed to know that. And if you would have studied, you would have known that it's 0.89. So all you had to do was circle B. Some of you chose C. I think you moved 2 places to the right. They didn't say rate. If they would have said, if this word would have been a rate, then it's a percentage. Then you would move 2 places. Well, actually, you would subtract 1 minus that and then move 2 places. So I don't know. Maybe some of you thought this was a decimal. I probably should fix that for next year. Get rid of those little dots that are right behind the C. And maybe you thought that was 0.89. I don't know. But that one was pretty simple. Okay, that could be a possibility that people thought that was a decimal. Alright, so flip the page to the next one, and let's look, you need to be looking up here, Orlando, in case you need a retest, because I did put a retest on quizzes. So you need to see how I'm working them out, so that way if you retest, you can work it out, okay? It says, what is the growth rate of the following exponential function? And they gave you this amount right here. The growth rate, that's the percentage, so this is the one where you had to take the b, subtract the 1, that leaves you with 0.75, and then multiply that by 100. That way you could change, this is the one where they want a percentage. So 75% would have been the answer on that. That's the growth rate. It grew, 100, think about it, 100% plus 75% would be the 1.75 if you move 2 places to the left. Okay. Alright, so on number 8, they gave you a table and it shows the population of P deer at the end of M months. And these are the numbers. You had something like that on the review. Remember they were talking about mice and it was different numbers. And so if you look, it says if the population continues to increase at the same rate, what will be the population of deer after 8 months? In other words, if you were to continue this, what is this number? And the easiest way would have been to set up an equation. Like, come up with the equation, look at your starting amount, and then look to see what's happening. So right here is your starting amount. This is your initial value, but it's not the 0, it's whatever number is here. This is your A. They started with 10 deer. So that's going to be your A on this equation, so 10. And then look at what the numbers are doing. Like if I take 80 and divide it by 40, what are they multiplying it by? What's 80 divided by 40? 2, right? The doubling. In other words, 10 times 2 is 20, 20 times 2 is 40, 40 times 2 is 80, and so forth. So that is your factor. That is your B. And so once you have that, then you can look it up, again, graph control T. You could have looked it up on the table to kind of see what was there at 8. You could have also continued the pattern. I don't know if some of you did that. I don't know if you noticed it was doubling, and so you kind of double until you got to the 8. That's good too. Like I'm showing you an easier route, but if you feel like that would have been easier for you to do, is just continue the pattern in here, then do it that way. There's nothing wrong with that. But this is the what you would have wanted to do, is graph it, and then do a control T, and look up 8. Like you would have just scrolled all the way down to 8. So 2,560, which would have been 8. So again, you have to make sure that you understand how these equations work. It makes it a lot easier. Brenda, please follow along. You guys are going to be able to retest. I'm not doing this for my own good. Come on. You guys can retest and bring your grade average up. As it is, some of your averages, they were at an A, and then you bombed the test, and so it went down to probably like a B. Bomb is bad. No, in my time, bomb was like, you failed it. You really, like, hit bottom. I know nowadays it has a different meaning. It means good. But no, you totally failed it, some of you. I mean, I had some 20s, 30s, like almost like they'd never even seen any of this information. I don't know what happened. It's sad. I mean, I can understand missing a couple because they're like those 2 that I showed you, but 20s and 30s, come on, you know more than that. Now on this one, the asymptote, all you had to do was look at that, the line, like the x-axis. The bottom of your graph does not go over this line. And so you needed to just pick one of these that would represent that line. They wanted to know, like, which one of these equations is the x-axis. And the easiest way to do this is, again, when you're in doubt, graph it out. You should have used, though, relations for this. Because if you look at the first one, it says x equals 0. So that doesn't start with the y. So you're going to have to put it using relations. And look, it's the y-axis. That's not the line we want. That does not represent the x. It represents the y. So if you hit tab and try the rest, the one that would have worked would have been this one. Y equals 0. When you graph y equals 0, you'll see a line that goes right there. There it is. That's what represents the x-axis. Question?
So that's going to be even a...
You're just looking for what represents this line. Like, say this curve would have been right here, Leno. Like, maybe a little bit lower, and you saw. What line do you see that it's touching at the bottom?
-4.
-4. So your answer would have been y equals -4.
Oh, yeah.
Here was going through 0, so that's why the answer is y equals 0. It's just that line that the bottom of your graph touches. Maybe that's how you can think of it. So the answer would have been D on that one. Okay. Alright, so let's look at the next question. Go ahead and flip over to the next page. Number 10, it says, look at the graph to the right, what is your domain? So maybe some of you missed this, but remember, domain is simple. Yeah, you just look at the X, these numbers right here, mark the spot where the graph, like in other words, how far to the left does this go? Well, it only goes to here. And on the other side, you look at the other side, it only goes up to the 1. So you know it's X, because you're looking at these numbers. So when you look at your answers, get rid of B and C. They both have a Y on them. And then you're down to these two choices. Well, look at the numbers now. This is at -4 and this one was at 1, so it's obvious it had to be D. And that's why I'm saying domain is not difficult if you know to look at your X numbers. Domain means the X values. And you need to remember Dora. That's how I showed you to remember that. You make a little T-chart, you put Dora on there, and that way you know that do means domain. Okay, that's your X's. Okay, so again, left to right. Now on number 11, they wanted range. What does range mean? Right, it's the Y numbers. So in other words, this time, instead of looking at the X-axis, you want to look on the Y. And you want to look at the lowest point to the highest point. It goes up to 4. This graph, the lowest it goes is this, which is right here, and the highest is 4. And again, it's the Y's. So when you look over here, you can go, oh, okay, I know B and D are out because those say X. And then you go back and say, well, what numbers were they? This is at a -2, this is at a +4. Well, obviously the answer has to be A because the other one says -3 degrees. So again, if you're missing these, remember Dora. Do is domain, which is X. Range is, raw is range, which is the Y. Okay. Alright, number 12, they wanted to know, again, looking at this parent function over here, what is a domain? Well, here, the domain are your X values. But if you look on the left, I see an arrow, and you should have put an arrow. And if you look on the right side of the graph, there's another arrow. And what do we say about double arrows? Well, they're all real numbers because you're going to use every X number all the way to -infinity and positive infinity. So again, you're going to use everything. Yeah. 11 was, let me go back.
Oh.
This one, 8, -2, because remember this is the lowest it went, this is the highest it went, and that's the numbers that A shows. Alright, now number 13, it says, look at the graph to the right, what is the range? So range means the low and high, because it's your Y numbers, like right away you should put a Y there. The lowest it goes is 0, the highest it goes is to infinity, but this is not double arrows. You have a bottom number of 0, and then it goes to only positive infinity. So it can't be all real numbers, and it can't be B, because B has an X, so I would have gotten rid of those two right off the bat. Which one is showing a 0? Like something having to do with 0? Well, C. Y's are greater than 0. Those are the Y numbers you're going to use only. Okay. You're not going to have an equal sign, because remember, they don't touch the bottom of this line. Like, they're never going to get to 0, but they get very close to 0. Those exponentials, okay? Alright, so let's look at 14. These are the last two right here. It says that a local youth group is planning a trip to a local amusement park. They're taking a bus with up to 18 people. So that means from 0 to 18, they're going to take that many people. It's going to cost $15 for the parking, and then the tickets to enter the park are $27.50 per person. And here's the equation they gave you, and it makes sense. $27.50 per person plus the $15 for the parking. Where Y represents the cost to go to the park, and X represents the number of people who go to this excursion, which means this trip. So what is a reasonable domain? These are the ones where I was like, okay, so let's graph that. Let's go look at the table to see what would be some reasonable domain numbers that we could use for this particular problem. And so if you would have graphed it, you would have seen a line, and then if you go to Control T, now if this represents people, can you have -1 people? No. Can you have no people? Yes. Can you have 1 person go? Yes. 2, 3. Up to how many did they say could go? Up to 18. So you should have looked at only those domain numbers from 0 to 18. And there was one answer that showed that representation, and it was A. And it did say whole numbers for a reason, because you can't have half a person, and you can't buy half a ticket for that person. You buy only whole tickets, 1 ticket, 2 tickets, 3 tickets.
Miss, was there something for 2?
13, let me go back.
Oh.
It was Y greater than 0, because it was everything from 0 and out. Okay? Alright, so let's look at the last one then. Last question is number 15. It says Cynthia is going to a concert for her birthday. She wants to invite up to 9 friends. So 9 friends and herself. Up to 9 friends. That could be a total of 10 max. And then it says the tickets are $50 and $10 for the parking fee. The function 50 times x plus 10 can be used to calculate the total cost. X is the number of tickets, y is the total cost. And then this time they want a range, a reasonable range amount, reasonable y numbers. So if you would have graphed this particular function, again, it's about graphing it and looking at the numbers on the table. This is how you would have graphed it. Do a Control T, and then go ask yourself, okay, is it reasonable to buy -1 tickets again? No. So reasonable would mean, let's start here. If nobody goes, a reasonable range would be $10. If 1 person goes, a reasonable range would be 60, and then 110, and then, so up to how many people was she going to invite? Well, 9 friends and herself, so up to $510 would be the max that she would spend if she's only going to invite up to 9 friends. That doesn't mean that's how many will go, but that's a reasonable range, okay? So this right here would have been a good answer, 10 to 510. Like, that's a reasonable amount that she might spend, anywhere from $10 if nobody goes to 510, okay? So I do want to give you this code for the quizzes, and you can start it today. We do have time. You have about maybe 5, 10, 15, 20, almost 20 minutes. But I want you to put sign in with this code, and you do need to put your last name, first name. Now, not everybody, you know, like we had the 100s, we had 300. So, of course, they don't need to retake. They can maybe look at their assignments. I can print out grades right now while you're doing that, and they can see if they're missing any assignments. But, yeah, if you made 100, you don't have to do this, unless you want to do it, again, for extra credit. Because what I can do is, if you do it, make 100, I can replace a low grade. So those of you who made 100, you might want to use that grade for, like, an extra credit. Like a low grade, you might have it. The iPads are back here, so grab an iPad. I do need for you, if you feel it, that you need to read this, even 7s and 8s, because again, now that we've gone over it, you probably have more idea on how to work it out. So get the iPad so you can use your own device, either one. You use your own device, Michelle? Yeah. Nice talk to you. Yeah. Elena, go ahead. Let me input yours to see how you did, see if you need a reset, so that you do what you need to. Brenda?
I'll take Brenda. This way.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and pick up the downside. That way we can compare and see how you did. So anybody who wants to do better can do this, and again, you can also do it for an extra credit. You need to erase it. Elena, if you could, and put yours into the input this using this number right here, EA39, and then remember district is 031903. That's district, that's the assessment ID. That's the only you would have done on yours. There are 20 questions because I wanted them to be worth like less, so they're 5 points each. If you miss up to 6, you still make it 70. Whereas on the real test, it was 15, and they're worth so much more. You can only miss like 4. So it's trying to make it a little bit easier. Some of them are a little bit easier, like I just asked you, look at the picture and what is this. The questions I added were easy. To try and help you. Jonas. Here, you can do me a favor. These 2 students have not inputted, and I need their grade before they get here. Do you have a device that you can, you have a device? Okay, you need to share that. And let me get you their ID, because you're gonna need, one of them is Caroline. Yeah, I have another sheet that has their ID on I put this ID down. It is... Alright, it is 38410. Yeah. And then the other one is Alexander. 38.
Caroline is
38410. Yeah, 38410. We're doing no talking. This is a test, it's a retest. You need to treat it like a test. Alexander was 84057. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so that's, then you just need to retest. So log on to, Quizlet. Let's see if you can retake the test.
I didn't work on the rest of the answers.
Well, they're not the same questions, do I know? I was just going over the exam. So you don't need to do these answers. It's not going to help you. Monday. There's another one. Here's another one. That one plugged in? Yeah. They're all plugged in overnight. You have charges of the there. So what is it doing?
Like, getting turned up connected.
Oh. QUIZ. If you put double D on the first D, it won't let you go because it's a blocked website.
Oh, here it is.
Last name, first name.
Miss, I don't know which quiz it is.
Quizlet, QUIZ. IZZ. Yeah. And then you're gonna do join again. And then you put the code 959692. Oh, he did? Oh, okay, maybe he did. I thought he had it. What did he get? Okay. Because it's one.
Looking up on that. Ankle stop working. Oh, God.
Yes. Growth factor, that would be the B. And you don't have to like move the place to the right or anything, you just put the back. Whatever number is there is that. Domain, left to right. Range, low to high. If you see an arrow on the left side and the right side, it's all in numbers. If you don't, if you see little dots, look at where they're at.